And our guest today is a legend on that recruiting trail in the business. He strikes fear a lot of times in other coaches when he's going after kids that they want. We have Coach Vince Marrow, drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the 11th round in the 1992 draft, served as assistant coach at Toledo, Nebraska, and NFL Europe, former head high school coach at Springfield Local High School in Ohio, hired by Kentucky as the tight end coach, and now also serves as the recruiting coordinator and NFL liaison. We want to welcome in Coach Vince Marrow to our show.
Glad to be on, guys. Just another day in Lexington. About to ramp it up with some high school camp Sunday. So glad to be on you guys' show.
Coach, they say wherever you at, the sun shines brighter, the water is wetter, and the ice is colder. That's what they tell me out in the streets.
Man, I don't know, man. I just like to say, man, like, in this business, I love what I do. Working for a great guy that I grew up with, working for a great university. So been here 12 years. There's been other people that call, but I stayed planted here because when you're around good people, administration, the president, on down, everybody's all in, and so it makes it a great place to be at.
Now, you brought up Stoops already. You attended Cardinal Mooney High School in Youngstown, Ohio. Now we're talking about the DeBartolo family, the Yorks, the Stoops brothers, the Pelini family. This is what your alumni functions and class reunions look like. You've worked as a graduate assistant under Pelini, as a tight end coach under Stoops, high school teammates of yours in the past. How important is it for coaches to understand, to network and stay connected to people as you grow in the profession?
That's Carl's a good question. People ask me, they say, man, your jump was fast in college. And I was like, well, I spent, 6 years in NFL Europe as a coach. And then when the league folded, went to my alma mater, Toledo, was there. And then we got let go. And I was actually going to take a job with the 49ers, believe it or not. And at the time, my wife was, she was director of UT Hospital. And so she had a really good job. And I was coaching at Toledo. And the suburb area we lived in was Springfield. And they had just built a new facility. And just make a long story short, one of our other coaches wanted that job. And so I called, it's all about connections. I called a girl that I went to college with. She was the principal. And she was like, well, we don't really want to talk to him. We want to talk to you. And I'm like, I'm not going to be no head high school coach. You can forget that. And make a long story short, I was the first African-American hired in that conference. And I was very happy. I remember the movie Coach, I wasn't on your level, Carl, but I was going to try to make it like, remember the Titans and let's just win and be there. And then my buddy, Bo Pelini, called me. People don't know me and Bo Pelini were best friends growing up. And he called me. And he's like, man, I need your help. I remember my wife looked at me like, I am not moving to Lincoln, Nebraska. And we did. Was there for 3 years. And then we was going to, I got the recruit. And so I had signed like 2 5-stars, a couple 4-stars. And, the thing was that I was going to take over as the tight end coach. And what happened was we in the Big Ten championship and we about to play Wisconsin. We ended up getting our tail kicked, but me and Bo was in his suite the night before, and he says, hey, Mark called. His nickname, which we all know, but he said Mark called, and he said he wanted to talk to you. And he was already about to make me the tight end coach there, but I was like, man, Kentucky, Lexington. I said, I was doing damage in Ohio, but, you go to Lexington, Cincinnati is only like an hour away. Columbus is 2.5 hours. Cleveland is 5. Youngstown is 6. I was like, we can do some serious damage there. So end up going there. And the question you asked is this. I tell young coaches, like, they look at me, how I climbed up, and they look at me as, man, I get a lot of calls from actually a lot of young African-American coaches, and they want to know, they want experience, they want to know advice. And I said, never burn bridges. Be respectful, especially if you're a former player. We got a problem of, being in line and saying, hey, I'm not saying all former players, but we got to put aside when we played, and now you got to say, hey, I'm starting at a lower level, and I got to they want me to take the water, they want me to go get coffee. I got to do it. And it don't make you like belittling yourself. You're just doing what you need to do to get promoted. And I work for two guys that I went to high school with. I've been very blessed. And, but there's also a reason why I haven't left, because of my, where we from in Youngstown is a very unique place. And I remember when I was going to go to Michigan, was called in Michigan State, Mark's uncle, he coaches my brothers in the 80s. He sent me a long text, and it was basically like, just to cut through it, you ain't going no damn where. This is who we are. This is what we do. And I laughed, but it was serious. So I always say, man, do not burn bridges, man. Just do the little things, because you never know who's watching, and you never know who's going to be that next head coach. So it can be somebody that's a quarterback coach. It can be somebody that's a tight end coach. It can be somebody that's an O-line coach, and they take a job. That's how this thing works. And then people take you with them. But if you a disrespectful person, I can promise you them guys already on their list. I don't want to hire this guy.
Now, Coach, you and I have very similar paths. Buffalo Bills, yeah. NFL Europe, we talked about it. And also went ahead against each other a few times in recruiting.
Yeah.
Now, in the profession, we always hear it's not who you know, but who knows you. And you just touched on it. How important are relationships and keeping those relationships and helping you climb that ladder as a young coach, like you said?
I could use that in both, and then even in the recruiting, but just relationships, you got to be professional in this business. And ain't nobody saying you got to change who you are. I'm from Youngstown. I'm from the south side of Youngstown, very, very what we call the hood. But you got to be a guy that's willing to go above and beyond. And you got to be a guy that's willing to work with people who don't look like you. If you come from the inner city and you've been around, predominantly 90% African-American people, in this business, no matter whether you're going in, Fortune 500, whether you're going in any kind of business, you're going to work with diverse people. So you have to learn how to work with people who don't look like you. And then secondly, you have to be a person who's willing to serve, It ain't always about you. Whether you score, 3-4 touchdowns a game, you ain't doing that no more. And you got to de-recruit your own self. And so you just got to make sure the relationships are very positive. You ain't going to be perfect, but people can see through who you really are. And like I say, in football, you guys know, it's a bond where it's the only place where it's, diverse a lot in these locker rooms. And you just have to be a person used to being around people who don't look like you too.
Coach, you touched on something a second ago that I feel like is very important. Now, you had an unconventional start to your career. You've been a GA. You coached at the high school level. Now you're at the University of Kentucky in the SEC. And so when you talked about players needing to deprogram themselves from being the top guy, that if they want to get into coaching, they have to start at the entry level. Can you kind of tell the players that are watching this what you mean by that?
Well, prime example, it's a couple of young men who were former players and they wanted to get into coaching. And I think they see, and Carl and Smoke, you guys know this. Most people look at where you at right now. Like Carl, they say you won 2 state championships. Smoke, you've been scouting all that, but they don't see the beginning part. And so a lot of these guys, when you give them what it's going to take, whether it be an intern or a scout or a quality control, it's going to take some sacrifice. Like days of you going home at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock are over. You may go home at 1 o'clock in the morning on some days. And you got to be willing to do it. And I always tell people this, the reason why I recruited a high level, because I love what I do. Like, I'm going to do this regardless. I did it in high school. It basically did it even in NFL Europe. So you got to be willing to sacrifice. And I think guys don't, when they look at what the hours are going to be, they're like, man, I don't know, because they, and I think Carl heard you say this on one of your shows. These guys, when you young coaches, they still want to kick it. And you ain't doing that when you're a GA. You ain't even doing that when you're a coach because the hours that are spent. But when you're a GA or intern, just understand this, whoever's listening to me, it's a great profession to be in. It will pay off if you do the right things, but it's time consuming and you got to be willing to do it. If you ain't willing to do it, you ain't going to last. It's going to eat you up. You ain't going to last.
Coach, you said a mouthful, and I agree 100% what you're saying, because when I started out, if you GA'd, you had to be in before everybody, and you stayed later than everybody. And most of the time, you slept in the office.
Mm-hmm.
I know you just touched on recruiting and the importance of recruiting, and we'll just flip a little bit to the recruiting side of it. Now, people might not know you were a two-sport athlete, hooper at Youngstown, transferring over to Toledo and playing football there at the tight end position. Now, Carl and I always talk about multi-sport athletes. How much value do you place on the multi-sport athletes in your evaluation?
Man, for me, and it's, I love going to watch basketball games. Guys that are football players. I like to see how they move. I like to see how you test it, how you get up in somebody's face. If you're a DB and you playing point guard, I like to see, how you match up on that point guard. You picking them up. It's showing all your athletic ability. When with me, people didn't notice, I was All-American in high school and I was Mr. Basketball. And my brother played pro ball. My brother kept telling me he played pro football. He kept telling me, man, you will be a big-time tight end. And it took Nick Saban to convince me to say, hey, you're a decent basketball player, but you running 4.58 at 250, at 240. You'll be a really good tight end. And so I just really love, and I ain't saying I love to see guys go run track. I love to see guys play baseball. But some guys get zeroed into, they just want to just concentrate on, changing their body, doing this and doing that. I'm more like, man, look, get out and play as many sports as you can. Like I said, I love sitting in gyms, sitting up in the top corner and watching a dude play basketball. I think it tells me a lot about him. And it shows me if he's twitchy enough, So I like it. But, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. You can play one. But the guys that I recruited, they all been 2-3 sport athletes.
Coach, I don't care if you're in a barbershop, if you're at a football camp, if you're in your group chat, everywhere you go, the conversation about who is the best in high school football comes up. And it always starts with Texas, Florida, California, Georgia starting the end of the conversation. Does the state of Ohio belong in this conversation?
Man, let me tell you something. For a long time, Ohio was in the top 5. I remember the NFL did the top NFL guys from cities. There were 4 cities from small cities per capita. There were 4 cities from Ohio. That told you enough right there. Benny Snell, the year I recruited Benny Snell in that OCC conference, they averaged 20 to 25 Power 5 guys that come out and go Power 5 pretty much every year. I think when we played Penn State, and this actually put a sign on the Big Ten, when we played Penn State in 2018, when we had them 7-8 guys drafted, and Josh Allen was a first-round pick, I remember was it Murrah? What's the guy who do CBS with Kirk Herbstreit? He was doing the game, and he was talking about how they kept calling all these guys from Ohio, making plays. And I remember he said, how did they let these guys get out of Ohio? At that time, we had like 7 out of the top 12 guys committed. But when you look at that roster, when we played Penn State, out of our 22 starters, 13 was from Ohio when we beat Penn State in the Citrus Bowl. And so Ohio is a very strong breeding ground, which you're starting to see with Georgia, Carl and Smoke. Ohio used to be a population of 275. It's now down to 65,000 because a lot of people have migrated to Atlanta, to Georgia, Beaufort. There's a lot of people down there that I know that their parents are from up north, but when the jobs went, they moved south. So Ohio's always going to be for us because Kentucky, we only going to have 3 to 4 guys that can play in the SEC. I say SEC. There's 2 other schools in Kentucky, but I'm saying who can play in the SEC. We may have 2 to 3 guys a year that can do that. And so we have to go to Ohio and make that our second home.
Now, Coach, you touched on NFL. And I worked in the NFL with the Bills, just like you played for the Bills. We're both members of Bill Mafia, so we know what that is right there. And we talked about the snow and all that. But when I evaluated players at Kentucky when I was working with the Buffalo Bills, we knew that was a certain brand of guys that you produced. I know you said Josh Allen, but there's tons more that you guys had. Now, you guys they were physical, competitive, tough, but they all could take hard coaching, which we looked at and was like, that's one of the number one things. Now, what are some of the non-negotiable, non-athletics traits that you look for in a prospect when you're evaluating them?
So if you did your homework, you would say, you're right about what you're saying, Smoke. Like in the last 4 to 5 years, we have had, I think we in the top 4 or 5 putting DBs in the NFL. Then you go with linebackers and D-line. But when you look at guys that we recruit and we evaluate, I'm looking at, bro, when that guy come on that visit, I'm looking at the way he treat his mother. I'm looking at, is he respectful to when we introduce him to our media relations people, our academic people, mainly females. When they go in the cafeteria, how are they? Are they, very respectful to the ladies that are serving them, or it's like, hey, this is just what you're supposed to do? So I look at little things. Where me and Mark from, we are blue collar, old school. You respect your parents, you respect authority figures. You whether it's a guy working or a woman working in the cafeteria, we all have people in our family that was like that. My grandmother worked in the cafeteria till she was 75 years old. So I look at little things. It's the little things I look at. And if a guy's disrespecting his mother or disrespecting some female like on campus, I won't say nothing. But soon when them guys leave, I'll say to Stoops or I'll say to some of the other coaches, like, look, man, we don't want that guy gonna be a problem. We don't need him here. And that's why I try to tell, this, you two guys know this in the NFL. I tell my guys all the time, when you evaluate guys, there's 20 good receivers or 20 good DBs. Now, y'all trying to eliminate the process. So if this guy, if he's a butthole, if he's doing this, doing that, that makes your job more easier. It's more broader with us of who we going to bring on campus. And the last couple of years, we have really bought some high character guys that when you look at this board, all these guys on both sides, they all in the NFL. These are all the guys that I recruited over the years that's in the NFL, but they were great people and they graduated. That means more to me than them guys getting called on Friday, Saturday, Thursday. It's going to change their life, but this degree and them graduate going to change their life 40 years from now.
Coach, before we get you out of here, we want to ask you this. We've all been through this journey, this coaching journey, this football journey. Who are some young coaches in the business right now? They could be GAs, a positional guy. Who are some guys that are going to be next up that we're going to be hearing about tomorrow?
I'll say guy in our building is Chris Collins. He's a young guy. We just named him a co-coordinator. He recruits the South. He does a really good job. Anwar Stewart is a really good coach. And then there's a guy outside of that I'm a really throw out. This guy named CJ Conrad who played for me. He was a 4-year starter. He was at EKU, went to the Giants, was there 2 years, and now he just got hired by Burns at Kent State. He's really going to be an upcoming guy. But the guy that I really like is Bush Handon, the guy that we just hired. He's a young guy, was an NFL some, and now he's in college, and we just hired him as a coordinator. Guy can relate to players, can recruit well, but I think he's going to be a guy. I think him and Chris Collins are guys that you're going to hear about. I really do.
Coach, we want to thank you for coming on with us today. Wealth of information, wealth of knowledge. Super fans of yours and the work that you put in. We appreciate you, my brother. We wish you massive success and good luck on your season this year.
I appreciate it. I do got to say this, man. I ain't know I was around royalty. I ain't never been around a guy that won a state championship with girls and boys. I'm like, man, I'm surprised people ain't beating down your door, man. Jeez, I'm learning more and more about you. And I'm like, damn, I didn't know this cat won a state championship with girls.
Hey man, so I won a state championship in football and basketball as the head coach. I did not win a state championship in girls, but I also coached a girl who was a McDonald's All-American.
Oh, so wait a minute. So you won a state championship with boys basketball and boys football.
Yes.
Come on, Smoke. What are we talking about, man?
Man, listen, we're just honored enough just to be around them.
Yes.
You get some old riffraff just here just mumbling words, and he's just sitting there with a crown on his head.
Smoke, I listened to you guys a couple shows, and I was like, these brothers, I will stamp this. What y'all talk about is legit, is real, and it's true. And I think a lot of inspiring coaches that are young need to listen to y'all show, and athletes that's getting recruited need to listen to y'all show, because brother, I just happened one day to listen to y'all, and I was like, man, these two guys, this is legit. So I really appreciate y'all having me on, man. And I keep praying for you guys, and y'all got to come up here and catch a football game.
We will. We will. We're gonna get up there and check you out for sure.
Okay, man.
All right, coach.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.